Tears of the Kingdom is... it's a good game. It's good. It's great. I would go so far as to say it's an all-time best. It is kind of hard to deny that it's a great game, unless you've become this completely jaded gamer. Or maybe you're a bit of a hater. It's received universal acclaim, a top Game of the Year candidate, and one of my favorite games of all time. It is one of those few open world games that made me want to start a whole new playthrough immediately after beating it. Over 500 hours in, and I am still having a great time with it. However, for as amazing as this game is, for as many improvements it made over Breath of the Wild, for as much as I absolutely love it, it isn't without some major issues. The longer I play it, the more these things stand out. Things that, in my eyes, keep it from being the perfect game. My biggest problem with this game is with the story. Let's put aside for a moment the fact that Ganondorf is really boring as a main antagonist. No personality, just evil dude that wants to take over the world. I didn't like that. They could have done better. But whatever, that's not my real gripe here. My beef is with the time travel. I understand time travel has been a core aspect of Zelda games. I also understand trying to use time travel as a narrative device will inevitably lead to paradoxes inherent in time travel itself. My problem is just how poorly thought out the time travel is in Tears of the Kingdom. It creates incongruities within the story itself, and, in some regards, renders the events of Breath of the Wild impossible. Now, in order to avoid any potential, actually comments from some of the more hardcore Zelda lore enthusiasts, I'm gonna preface this by saying my only real experience with Zelda lore comes from these two games. I do have some knowledge, but that comes from watching YouTube videos. Regardless, it's irrelevant anyway. The way I see it, if you need to dig through canon to explain inconsistencies in a story, the story itself isn't well put together in the first place. A good story should both fit well within the established canon and have a cohesive story on its own. Either way, these two games seem fairly detached from the other Zelda games, almost like it's an attempt at a retcon. Having said that, let's give a quick recap, shall we? Breath of the Wild happens. 7-ish or so years later, Link and Zelda wake Ganon up when he's just trying to take a nice little nap. He's understandably pissed at this and proceeds to break Link's favorite toy and launch them both into a chasm. Because of the magic MacGuffin she picked up, Zelda is sent way back in time, like 20 or 30,000 years or something, to the first kingdom of Hyrule. Link is saved from plummeting to his death by some ghost hand, but got wrecked so hard he needs yet another nap to recover. He wakes up with a new badass ghost arm, courtesy of Ancient Alien, grabs his broken toy, and gives it to Zelda, who is still back in time, but can interact with the present because of the Temple of Time, I guess, which is apparently some sort of nexus point where the past and the present converge. Hooray, time travel. Zelda, now stuck in the past, has to fix Link's toy sword so that Ganondorf can't throw another temper tantrum and smash it to bits again. So she decides the only way to go about this is to eat her magical MacGuffin fruit gusher to become an eternal worm on a string and just fly around for tens of thousands of years waiting on Link. Fast forward to the present, Link gets good, pulls the sword from Derpy Zelda's head, and faces Ganondorf in a showdown that culminates in an epic Derpy dragon on dragon battle for the fate of Hyrule. Emerges victorious, and Ancient Alien and friends use their magical MacGuffins to reverse Zelda's derpitization, even though it's supposed to be permanent. But, of course, there has to be more Zelda games. All is good in the land, and Link and Zelda go to Taco Bell or something. I don't know. That is the story of Tears of the Kingdom in a nutshell. I know. I am being a bit cheeky and reductive about it. I didn't even bother mentioning the sages, but they're not all that relevant to my point. On the surface, this story is fine until you actually stop to think about it. Then it all starts to fall apart. First off, Zelda. If Zelda has been a dragon this whole time, how is she also a human? How could she hold off Calamity Ganon for 100 years? How could she even be there to find the fruit gusher that sent her to the past in the first place? She shouldn't even exist. Okay, fine. Apparently Zelda is the incarnation of the goddess Hylia. I could accept that. A goddess can simultaneously assume two physical forms. I could buy that. But it's not like it's brought up in either game. How am I supposed to know this without having prior knowledge of it or looking it up? This is what I mean about digging through canon to explain away an inconsistency with a story. Fair enough. Zelda's a goddess. I'll accept it. Let's move on. How about the Master Sword, huh? As far as I know, there's only one. Alright, there might be two. The sages may have forged another one for some convoluted Zelda lore reason. The thing is, none of that applies here. In these two games, there's only one. The Master Sword, which has been lodged in Zelda's head this whole time. Therefore, Link wouldn't be able to wield it, becoming Zelda's champion. Therefore, he couldn't have gotten his ass whooped, needing a 100-year nap. Therefore, can't retrieve it and take down Ganon in Breath of the Wild. Therefore, wouldn't have it in his possession for Ganon to smash it to bits. Meaning, he would not have been able to pass it to Zelda in the distant past in the first place. The framework for the time travel in Tears of the Kingdom is based off the classic bootstrap paradox, where the future creates the past, which in turn creates the future, resulting in this infinite causal loop. It does not work here at all. The sword is sent way too far into the past, and they never establish a scenario where Link can acquire it in order to send it to the past. The way things happen in this game, the Master Sword does not exist. The worst part is, there's an easy solution to this. Well, kind of. The Korok Forest, I think. Make it so that right before Link originally obtains a sword, it becomes dislodged from Zelda's head, drawn to the power of the Great Deku Tree. There you go. Problem solved. But then again, how does Link get it the second time? It wouldn't be in Zelda's head anymore. Okay, alright, let's back this up just a little bit. The Temple of Time. That moment when Zelda emerges from the ether. That makes sense. But this requires there to be two timelines. One with the sword and one without. And they both need to exist in the same timeline where Link sends the sword to the past. Damn it! That doesn't work either. Okay, how about this? Link is the one that ends up in an alternate timeline. He comes from the timeline where Zelda drops the sword, but returns to a Hyrule where she didn't? This could work, I guess. It certainly explains why so many NPCs seem to have no memory of Link, and why no one mentions the divine beasts, but what is this thing doing here? With that thing? That guardian shouldn't be there. It's a remnant of Breath of the Wild, which isn't possible if Zelda still has the sword in her head. Oh, God. No matter how I spin this, none of it works. My brain hurts just thinking about it. The only conclusion I have is time travel is stupid, and it should never be used as a plot device. No matter how hard you try, you can't explain a way to make the Master Sword paradox make any sense. There's also a little bit of ludonarrative dissonance to this weapon that I found disappointing. This is supposed to be some legendary weapon of legend, a magic sword that could seal away the darkness and defeat Ganondorf, but in reality, you could use any weapon at all to beat him. I would have loved it if they made it the only weapon that could damage him. I know, this would go against the freeform philosophy the new Zeldas have adopted. I love that from the moment you're let loose in this world, you could go straight to the final boss. It is a bold and, quite frankly, excellent design choice that, unfortunately, completely undermines the plot. The Master Sword is a vital aspect of the story, yet its acquisition is not only optional, it is completely unnecessary. On top of that, the sword is also kind of trash. The new fusion mechanic is mostly to blame for this. It is great to be able to attach all that junk you collect to any weapon, boosting its damage or changing its properties, but it completely breaks the weapon system. Adding the strongest buff to the Master Sword gives it 85 damage or something like that. That's pretty good. Then you come across Gerudo weapons. Their fusion bonus is ridiculous. The strongest fused Gerudo scimitar does upwards of 50 points more damage. Once I realized that, I just filled my inventory with them. They're fairly abundant and easy to find if you explore the map well. The Master Sword ended up being my 4th or 5th best one-handed sword weapon, and like my 10th or 11th option. My second playthrough, I was using that thing mostly as a glorified mallet to break rocks. For a weapon as important to not just this story, but the entire franchise, that's just sad. There are some pretty big inconsistencies with the story and imbalances, not just with the weapons, but the entire progression system. Much like Breath of the Wild, as you play, the game spawns in stronger enemies. This is balanced out by getting more hearts, better weapons, and upgrading your armor with the great fairies. In Breath of the Wild, this works very well. Enemies do hit hard from the start, yet it feels as if they get tougher at more or less the same rate you do. That is not the case with Tears of the Kingdom. Unlike Breath of the Wild, where you find a fairy and have instant access to it, letting you get your armor upgraded early in the game, here the fairies are walled off by a series of side quests before you can use them. This meant, given how enemy scaling works in both these games, they did so much more damage for way longer than they should. These things hit like a fucking brick to the face. Didn't matter if I got more hearts, they'd wipe out my entire health bar in one shot. This went on forever until I figured out how to unlock the fairies. This is one of those very few things that Breath of the Wild definitely does better, although not by all that much. Both of these games require so much random junk to upgrade anything. It is so grindy trying to get your armor past level 2. Luckily, I was good enough in my second playthrough to where I didn't upgrade jack, cause I was damn sure not about to go collect 30 frogs or some nonsense like that again. Honestly, the less I have to deal with the great fairies, the better. I've got a little bit of a beef with these great fairies. Maybe it's just me. No one else really mentions it. Only a few jokey videos here and there, but it really bothers me. I'm actually a bit surprised Nintendo left them virtually unchanged from Breath of the Wild. These fairies are total creepy pervos, and it is not okay. I'll admit, I do take a bit of personal offense to this because of a certain experience I had with a patron at my former job. It isn't only that. If the roles were reversed and Link was a female, people would be losing their shit over this. But since Link is a dude, it's perfectly fine? No! No. It is blatantly obvious Link is not comfortable with the way these fairies are treating him. Yet, they keep escalating. I don't want to know what goes on when Link is dragged under the water. I can't begin to imagine the horrors and traumas Link has to endure just to be able to tank a hit from a silver moblin. They should be cancelled and arrested. Someone needs to notify the Hyrulean authorities about what these felonious Link piddlers have been up to. They must be stopped.